Carl, what is it about film that we all intrinsically relate to in a deeply emotional way that can be analyzed from a cognitive point of view and subjecting film to the kind of analysis that normally we would do to music and art in its traditional sense?
Well, film, as you know, is a very eclectic art form, and it combines elements of all of the other arts. Mm-hmm. So, narrative, the visual image, music, sound, movement. So it's a very complicated thing to analyze a film. I am primarily interested in the way that all of those visual and sonic elements are used to tell a story. So I'm interested in narrative film primarily, most recently. And it's really, in part, it's the story that I think elicits our attention. I mean, the philosopher Noel Carroll called films engines of attention because they tell stories, and I'll get to the visual and sonic part in just a minute. But storytelling, of course, is it's a very important and sort of basic form of human communication. And I think that stories, typically a good storyteller is someone who knows how to provide that information in such a way that it elicits emotion throughout. At least fascination, curiosity, anticipation, but perhaps also laughter, tears, various other kinds of emotions.
It's kind of an attention and engagement. That's the primary thing. And then it can be happy or sad, but if you have the engagement, then the opportunity to generate emotion.
Right, exactly. But I think it's not, I would sort of say that emotion is kind of a prerequisite for the capacity of stories to engage our attention over a period of 2 hours. I mean, what other kind of communication that you know of can engage the generation which supposedly has the short attention span for 2 straight hours?
Right.
There's got to be something about it that is especially conducive to the way that to what we're interested in, but also to the way that we process information. So stories are one aspect of it. What's different between literature and the movies and television, I believe, is also the way that those media are able to provide information in such a way that our normal mode of uptake of the world around us is really brought into play. So the way that we respond to the faces of the people around us, the way that we respond to sounds, the way that we respond to visual information as we're walking through the world. I believe it was William James, the psychologist, philosopher psychologist, who said that movies were a lot like human consciousness, that they're kind of like a replication of the way that we move through the world. And so the combination of a good story with compelling visual images and sound that is used in ways to create a kind of a unified flow of information, I think makes it a very powerful medium.
Can you dissect it into the classic categories of perception, cognition, emotion?
Yeah, I can. Although I'm not a psychologist, so the way I do that is going to certainly be, at a basic level. But perception, I think that films rely on our everyday perceptual capacities, both with regard to what we see and what we hear. But the difference is that films are designed. So it's not like you're walking down the street and you just happen to notice something. They're very carefully designed so that the filmmaker gives you exactly the sounds she or he wants you to hear and exactly the image that she or he wants you to see in the way that she or he wants you to see it. So it relies on natural perception, but it's a very carefully directed kind of perception in the film setting.
So it seems the same in terms of the physiological processes, but because it's so designed and controlled, it really is of a different character.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Now, of course, there's a lot also that's culturally variable about the way we perceive the world. But I think, I believe that at its heart, films rely on kind of a natural, a replication of natural perception to a certain extent.
Okay, then cognition?
Yeah, stories narrative is one of the ways that we make sense of the world. I think that stories rely on basic cognitive skills, hypothesis making, anticipation, suspense and surprise are really sort of forms of providing information that engage cognition. When you think about sort of Hollywood storytelling, which is a very conventional form of storytelling on screens, everything that you read in the screenplay manuals is in part designed with cognition in mind. So providing information at a certain point and providing problems that you believe need to be solved for a protagonist, perhaps. Asking questions that need to be answered. So what the screenwriter does is provide the blueprint for the film, of course, but the blueprint is a series of problems that need solutions or a series of questions that need answers, and leading you along that path where you get, partial solutions or partial answers, new questions, partial answers to those questions. That's a cognitive process.
How then does emotion come into it in terms of its relationship to cognition?
Well, affects, and I would say that our affective lives have different ranges as far as their connection to what I might call cold cognition, or thinking, and anticipation, curiosity, and emotions. I would say are among the most cognitive of our affects. Emotions, to my mind, I adhere to what is typically known as the cognitive theory of the emotions, which is that emotions basically are perceptions of the significance of some aspect of the world in relation to our concerns. So when I see my spouse talking to a handsome man at a party and I feel jealousy, that's because I have a concern. That is, I want my spouse to love me, and I have a perception or a construal that she seems to be attracted to this other man. That's jealousy, right? So we define emotions in relation to narratives and in relations to what those narratives are about, concerns and ways of construing those concerns. So emotions are very cognitive, it strikes me. Now again, the thing about a film is that you don't typically have just any old emotion when you watch a film. The film is very carefully designed to elicit emotion. So if you look at the screenplay manuals, they not only tell you how to elicit certain types of emotions, but they also are full of advice about, how long a spectator can be expected to hold an emotion, and when you need to provide a turning point so that the emotion will be changed and a new emotion will take its place. So
it sounds manipulative, but that's what art is in a sense.
Well, it can be very manipulative, yeah. So, art can provide understanding, but art can also provide misunderstanding. But yeah, and of course, there are different styles of filmmaking too. So I would, the art cinema is far less interested, I think, in manipulating emotions the way that Hollywood does.